I will hand it off to you, admitting all.
Has everyone been admitted?
Yes, everyone's been admitted. People
Okay,
are
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give it another minute or so. Right, it's 10:02 Eastern Standard Time, so we'll go ahead and get started. Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us to discuss the importance of women-driven digital spaces in crisis, Iran, Afghanistan, and Ukraine. Over the last few years, we have seen how quickly people adapt to new challenges and develop new technologies to meet the emerging needs of women and children in crisis. We have seen online activism and solidarity begin online and convert into offline support and activism. To kick off our discussion, our extraordinary panelists will introduce themselves. We'll start with Shafika.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. I'm Shafika Khulwak. I'm from Afghanistan, a poet and a writer and women's rights activist. I have been working for a long time now in this field. I worked for a year as a women affairs journalist with BBC. I have been writing columns for the past several years. I graduated from the American University of Afghanistan. I studied political science, and right now I am a visiting scholar at Wellesley College and probably will be Fulbright scholar next fall semester, if God's will. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm directing Musawir Foundation, which is working for education, children literature, and their rights advocacy.
Thank you, Shafika. Masa?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Masa Ali Mardani. I predominantly work as an internet researcher and a digital rights advocate or activist. I specialize obviously in Iran, and I have been working in the space of digital rights advocacy, research, and activism on Iran for over a decade now. So I am a senior researcher at the Freedom of Expression organization, Article 19. I'm also a PhD candidate at the University of Oxford's Oxford Internet Institute, and I basically study the role of internet and social media in social movements, and how the state, especially authoritarian states like the Islamic Republic of Iran, enact information controls, and that is different kinds of censorship and surveillance to repress.
Thank you. Zinnia?
Hi, thanks a lot for having me here, inviting me here. I'm Ksenia Goldowska. I'm CEO and co-founder of Jellyfish.tech, Ukrainian-based software development company. I have been in tech sphere for 10 years already. I started as an assistant to project manager and then moved forward with establishing my own company. I really enjoy working with the different kind of products which can change the world to a better place somehow. I enjoy working with businesses and organizations to help them digitalize themselves, to work with the way of making them more productive and organized. And I love creating products and services to have them be available for people, to be convenient, and I enjoy working in this sphere, to be honest. I'm here not only as a Ukrainian woman in tech, I'm here also as a part of the team who is responsible for development of Vital Voices Hub, which is a digital ecosphere for women to connect, to share their experience, ideas, to participate in programs and solve their local programs. And this is one of the part of products which changes the world to a better place. And I personally love working on this project, not just because it fits my personal goals and values, but just because I also selfishly feel being needed to act as professional, to continue to this provides me and my team with the possibility to continue to create, to work, to feel to live at least part of our lives normally, even during the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for being with us today. So I'll kick things off with this question. And this question is for all of you. With so much progress happening so quickly, what development in tech do you find the most promising for achieving social change on and offline? Anyone want to start?
I'm happy to jump in. That's such an interesting question you asked, Tara, because as someone who's trying to be studying the history of tech and activism, especially the role of the internet for the past decade, I think oftentimes this sentiment can be a little bit dangerous. I apologize if I come from a cynical point of view, because of course a lot of the big tech companies that we know today kind of started off with this reputation of really empowering social movements and activism, especially in the early 2010s with the Arab Spring. And a lot of this utopian vision of, technology enabling democracy, and this kind of techno-deterministic vision of technology developed with this sentiment in mind. And of course, that was really broken down, this sentiment that, technology is going to enable democracy everywhere, just like it did during the Arab Spring. And, I think it took maybe a few years to really see that sentiment was a little bit more bleak than we actually thought. So I apologize if I'm injecting this kind of negativity. So I think attributing these values to technology without often seeing the harms that can be done can be quite dangerous. And obviously after the Arab Spring periods, we evolved into a situation post 2016 with the harms that technology can have, with the spread of misinformation and things like that utopian ideal was really unpacked. But needless to say, my point is there should be a very pragmatic vision of what technology can enable, and that it isn't everything. But of course, what I can say in terms of following what it has been, what promising elements it does have for movements like the Women Life Freedom Revolution that is being taken over, the women-led movement in Iran against the Islamic Republic, is that tech has this potential, obviously, to provide safety and security, to help with, the dissemination of information and communication. So therefore, there's so much responsibility with these big companies to enable safety and security, to have support for activists on the ground, to invest resources, to design technology for those vulnerable populations that so depend on them. So this kind of marriage of opportunity and hope with responsibility, I think, is the very pragmatic way that we need to think about technology in this field. And I hope that's a less than cynical but still optimistic response.
No, very optimistic, because you're right. With great power comes great responsibility. And in some cases, some entities have fallen short with that. But still within technology, there is optimism. There is a path forward, as you have outlined. So thank you. Masa, Zinnia, any one of you want to jump in on this question?
Actually, from my point of view, probably I wouldn't be able to, choose some specific platform, for example. But from my point of view, we have to understand that without those dramatical changes in our internet communication, for example, it would be impossible even for Ukraine to get such kind of support and to be so connected with each other, to fundraise all the funds needed for the army. So basically all the tools that provide us with the possibility to stay with each other online, this is something that, well, basically was a real base for our fighting back during this period. And it's also necessary to understand that for men in Ukraine, for example, it's obligatory, it's necessary to join armed forces if necessary. It's not obligatory for women, but still we can play significant role in this fighting because of such possibility that world provide us with all the digitalization of the communication, of the payment system, and so on. And there is one significant application for me that was developed also in Ukraine, which basically helps women who can be affected by domestic or any other kind of violence. This is very small basic application which looks like a menstrual calendar, but there is a hidden function which you can use to call the police without actually calling. It tracks your location. And this is something that can happen, unfortunately, especially with the young women, when you go to a group of people you don't really know and something bad can happen with you. And you can actually use this application without even showing that you are in trouble to people next to you who could bring dangers to you. And such small application, even without having women in this technology sphere, they wouldn't be even developed, just because men don't face such problems in such amount as we do in our lives. So yeah, even small application matters for sure.
Definitely, Zinnia. And I'm going to repeat the question again. With so much progress happening so quickly, what development in tech do you find the most promising for achieving social change on and offline? Shafika, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, I think it is like a two-sided sword. Like there is a negative part to it, and then there is a positive part to it. If you look at in the case of Afghanistan, if you see, like, I think as I have seen and observed in the past 18 months, the only place that women have visible presence is social media. And digital platforms. Physically, they are to most extent are erased from public space. So they're not invited to medias, they're not part of the government, they're not part of the public sector, they're not part of the NGOs, not in educational sector. So the only place women who are in exile, women who are in diaspora, they are participating in this discussion is the place of social media. But at the same time, it is very dangerous for people who are inside Afghanistan. But as we see, like most of them are targeted through their social media accounts. And also, apart from that, when the university was banned in Afghanistan, so a few girls in Nangarhar wanted to come together and do a protest. They created this WhatsApp group. And then the next day, someone from the Taliban was entered in that group. And he was sending these threatening messages to these young girls. So he basically had every information about them. A few of them posted in Facebook, and the next day their doors were knocked and their fathers and their families were threatened. Like we saw, this is, though they posted under the pseudonyms, under like a fake IDs, but they found out. And also it is helping them to reach out to more people. It is helping them to convey their messages, probably in some cases clearer than us, to more people than us. We saw when we were promoting a campaign for education, most of our posts that we wanted to sponsor were rejected by Twitter. They said this is against our policies. And we posted in English language. It was not in Persian, not in Dari. it was basically in English language, and they were not allowing us to promote those posts. And they said this is against our against our values or something like that. It's sometimes it happened with Facebook. So we are even if you post something which is you might be criticizing the Taliban or any other things that happen, patriarchy or any injustice that happens, your post might be taken out, that the more people report that, and they do not consider who is reporting this post. So of course they're the Taliban who are reporting my posts, and they do not see that. So it's kind of like in Afghanistan, especially the Twitter, Taliban are very, very active in Twitter. They have several accounts and they can target you in any way. And apart from that, especially women are targeted individually. They are in a way like verbal abuse is so much, especially in a society like Afghanistan. So it is at the same time giving you a platform to speak out, to share your ideas, to speak against the injustice that happens. But at the same time, if that gives you that platform, it gives the same platform to your enemy, the person that you're fighting. So the problem is that there is no differentiation between people who are fighting for justice and those who are probably spreading extremism, spreading these ideologies that are hurting ordinary people and especially women. So I would say like, yes, it is empowering the movements, but at the same time, it might put them in danger as well.
Thank you for sharing, but it's really clear that we need to put more women in tech, to put guardrails in place to help protect women and children in crisis. You know, as the example that Zenia gave as far as creating an app, so if someone is in trouble, they can make a call very discreetly, but the tech can also have a challenging side where it can also make the already vulnerable even more vulnerable. So it's definitely very important to get more women in tech, to come up with solutions to protect women in all of these spaces, whether it's social media, whether it's online, as well as offline. Shafika, I'll continue with you. There are approximately 2.5 million Afghan girls and young women who are out of school. How do you challenge the existing power structures and systematic oppression through your educational work?
Well, for now, the only feasible feasible project, or I don't know how to put it, but the only possible thing that we can reach out to more girls to have access to education is online. There is no better platform than that. Yes, there are some schools, underground schools, there are some courses, but it is very risky. The only place that they can be safe and they can have access to more education is through online education. What we are working on is an online platform where they will have, there are, before that, our work at Musawer Foundation, there were some platforms, some YouTube channels that have started working after the collapse and providing some educational materials via videos, and we see some of the courses that are only courses and providing some of the education. But what we are trying to do is to work on a school that will be like you feel this is a proper school, you are coming to the class, you're attending the class, the attendance is taking, you're taking the exams, you're doing the assignments, you're doing the homework, and at the same time you're finding a network, you're finding your own peers, your own groups of women and girls with whom you can speak, and you can share your stories, you can talk about your everyday life, what is going on. So this is schools in Afghanistan environment, you know, family environment in Afghanistan, sometimes it's very suppressing, it's very, very negative, and schools were the places where they would get out of this environment and go somewhere. They would forget about these family tensions, what is going on between the parents, what is going on between the mother-in-law and the grandmother and whoever. Like we are a communal society, so a lot of people are living together, so of course there were like conflicts and tensions between all of that, and that is influencing children. And schools were the places where they would forget. And we are trying to do the same thing, that they will forget their everyday misery. They will come together in a place where they will not only learn new things, but will have the courage to share their stories and have hope for a future.
Thank you, Shafika. Zinnia, implementing new technologies and creating engaging digital experience is a large part of what you do. How have you seen research being used to transform the narrative of tech and innovation to serve the women in Ukraine?
Thank you for the question. I'd probably want to start with the most obvious statement ever. Like, every person needs to know that there is someone who believes in them, who appreciates them for who they are and what they do. And it's better when someone is society. And from my point of view, during these 10 years, last 10 years, huge, massive changes happened to Ukrainian society. It happened because of the revolution of dignity. Because when society experiences such results of their choices, of fighting for those choices and succeeding in this, it brings this self-awareness, this dignity, this self-respect and self-responsibility for those choices. And this changes all the narratives, all the stereotypes in this society. As for stereotypes, there is a research that basically in elementary school, boys and girls are equally interested and equally good in STEM sciences and humanitarian sciences. The only difference dividing starts when in puberty, in middle school, when there are started to be divided into special classes, faculties, and girls tend to choose humanitarian sciences because at least partially because of those stereotypes that there are female interests and duty and male, which is obviously not true. We know that. And to continue fight with those stereotypes before the full-scale invasion in Ukraine took places different events which were organized by a local organization, for example, Unity City, which is located in Kiev. Those events were patronized by a worldwide organization like United Nations, UNICEF, and main focus was empowering girls that it's possible to be whoever you want to be. You just try yourself in this. It's cool, it's fun, it's necessary for society, and as a result, we can see that according to the study, unfortunately, this is the latest study I could find, that in 2020, that the share of women in Ukrainian IT sector has been growing by 16% each year. So sorry, I forgot the word. Sorry. Let me just continue. This works. We have to understand that empowering, investing, this works. At the moment, I see those initiatives globally. I see them online, and I even see local programs for girls, students of Ukraine, for example, in Poland, who currently study STEM in Poland. They could be invested and empowered to continue their professional growth in those domains. And as we see, it works. We provide girls with role models of successful women in those domains. We empower them, invest in them, and we can see this. Oh God, I also forget this word. The equality of amount of women and men in companies. So this share, yeah, it's not something that will happen in future. It's something that happens right now in the society. And what we need is to continue working with those initiatives, to continue empowering and encouraging girls, young women to try themselves in those domains, because, well, let's face it, world is in debt to women for all these centuries of limitation. And as Alice, CEO Vital Voices said, we don't have patience for 132 years. I selfishly want to see those with my own eyes during my own lifetime, to see those changes happen finally.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you're right, words are so powerful. And so if you tell a child they can, they will. And if you tell them they can't, they won't. And so investment is needed. So I thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Masa, what are some of the digital gaps that impact women of color?
Well, I mean, one of my really intelligent colleagues, Afsana Rigo, she's developed this concept that I think everyone working on technology should involve as well, and it's called design from the margins. And it's about involving the most marginalized in society and in the most risk averse places, including women, including queer women, men of all genders, within the ideation and implementation phase of technology. And so I think at the moment, this is really lacking in all different kinds of technologies, which is really designing from the margins. And I see this in all facets of the work that I do. So especially working with women and queer communities on the ground in Iran, this need to have features and technologies that would be designed for them, because if it was designed for them in those risk-averse situations, everyone would benefit at any point in their lives. And so there's so many different tools, and there's so many different companies that we've been trying to work with to start designing for these communities. For example, I mean, one of the things that, at Article 19, we've been really successful with, and my colleague, this other very incredible Iranian woman, Afsana, has been really successful with, is working with queer dating apps to really get them to start implementing features based on how the queer community in the MENA region experiences dating and communication in these, environments where being queer and that identity can be penalized with, even death. And so that has been extremely successful, getting applications like Grindr, like Her for queer women, to enable timers to obfuscate location. There's been so many cases of police authorities coming and making fake accounts to find queer folks, arrest them, use the evidence from these apps to persecute them. In terms of what we've seen women on the ground in Iran during this past movement need, they really have this need for protection and security online. When you're out on the streets and you're arrested, there needs to be means where you can erase your call logs, you can erase your phone logs, so this evidence isn't used against you. And so, I mean, I'm not the only one. There's numerous folks working in the field of digital rights who've kind of, especially during the first few months of this revolution that was happening in Iran, we were working day and night trying to support folks on the ground to get to companies. Someone's been arrested, you need to help secure their accounts right away so the authorities don't use this. So if these protocols have been in place from beforehand, it would be very helpful. I mean, even looking at some of the most secure technologies, Signal. I mean, I'm sure everyone here who has been involved in activism knows how valuable Signal is. Unfortunately, Signal was built by developers and folks in the global north. And so there's, we've seen things, I mean, even we've had examples from Tunisia recently where, we've seen more protests and more persecution to obviously on the ground on Iran. Women, protesters, dissidents get arrested, and they might be able to have their chat logs on timer and disappeared, but those call logs are still there because Signal hasn't really thought about developing these features for when an activist is arrested in Iran and suddenly their call logs are used as a method to, find a whole network of activists in a location like this. So there's a lot to be desired and worked on. It's obviously, I think we're in a situation right now, especially when it comes to the tech sphere, where we are kind of in a economic recession or going into an economic recession. So tech companies are slimming down a lot. There's a lot of layoffs. And so it's really unfortunate given that we're in these situations. We have so many crises. We have Afghanistan, we have Iran, we have Ukraine. There's so much need for there to be more resources and more manpower within these tech companies to ensure that their most vulnerable users are being invested in, that more tools and features are being developed in them. Hopefully, the tide of layoffs and things like that won't deter from the investment and time that is really needed to bolster the support that we need on the ground. I mean, I guess I don't want to get into a platform like Twitter because that really opens up a whole can of worms, but I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely perfect. Yes, absolutely perfect. Thank you, Masa. Because when we lean in with inclusion, we help to accelerate innovation, and that just benefits us all. So thank you for sharing. Zinnia, what are some consequences when global movements do not apply a digital lens to their advocacy work?
Can you repeat just one more time because my internet jumped a little bit? Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So what are some consequences when global movements do not apply a digital lens to their advocacy work?
Okay. Well, basically, from the very basic perspective, it will happen same thing that happens to any kind of organization or business that is not going through the digitalization process. Because nowadays we have to understand your presence in the internet, your availability that you provide to the end user, to the end customer, to the participant of our organization. This is something that is available at the moment. So in case of not doing anything in this field, it may just lead to not getting a successful amount of people to support your values and ideas, at least.
Thank you. Okay, so before we start taking questions from the audience, I have one last question for you all. We have seen a growing number of tech leaders called upon to address some of the most pressing issues. How would you challenge tech leaders, organizations, as well as individuals to address the critical global issues that women and children are facing? Whoever wants to jump in and go first.
Must I went first? Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to go first? Sorry, I didn't hear you. But yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. I guess I was trying to spend some time here. I have to say, I don't think that tech leaders don't know. Like, I don't think they don't know that, Afghan women need support, that Iranian women and marginalized folks in Iran, Ukrainian women, I don't think they're unaware that there is a need for support and investment in these communities. So, but it is always good to create campaigns and awareness, and Vital Voices obviously plays a really crucial role here in amping up that pressure to make these priorities. I guess, I mean, all three of us here work on countries that I guess have been able to occupy space within international headlines. Although, I guess, sometimes the global attention span for Afghanistan or Iran can be less limited. And thus, when the attention is less on these contexts, the tech companies and the leaders have less, I guess, incentive to invest on these contexts and communities. But there's so much to be done. And I mean, one of the major issues that I have been working on in Persian is the need for them to really invest in just Persian language development in order to help make the platforms more secure, to help battle hate speech. Right now, the situation in the Iranian context, I mean, it's now been over 6 months, there has been an ongoing, women life revolution in Iran. And we really have entered this phase where the regime is really trying to amp up information warfare to tear down opposition, to create chaos with different kinds of disinformation, to obviously inject fear into the populace. And so we really need a lot of investment by these tech companies to battle different kinds of hate speech, to battle different kinds of PSYOP operations. I mean, this was something we saw within the Syrian context as well. The Syrian revolution had very sophisticated campaigns to tear down the opposition from both Russian, Syrian, Iranian sources. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, and there should be more investment. Unfortunately, I mean, especially on Twitter, Twitter has played this really important role during the revolution in Iran. I mean, the Mahsa Amini hashtag, Mahsa Amini being the trigger, her murder was the trigger for this movement. And the hashtag for her name has become this very important symbolic part of the movement. And so Twitter has played a really important role. But at the same time, we've been seeing so many state actors. We've been seeing forced confessions from courts and streets of protesters. And we really haven't been seeing that investment or that desire to kind of combat that kind of hate speech from a company like Twitter. So it's incredibly important that these, I guess, non-Western contexts, these non-Western online battles become priorities for these companies. Unpacking why it's not in the Twitter case, I guess it's quite complex. I'm happy to get into it, but it might have to be its own separate topic. But certainly, I mean, across all the platforms, I mean, it's a bit easier within, I guess, companies like Meta, which do still have human rights teams and still kind of create crisis response teams. I mean, I would be super interested to know what Shafiqa's experience is with, the situation in Afghanistan, given the, attention span comes and goes, I guess, in that context, as it does on Iran too.
So I think I kind of follow up with that, what Masa said. I think it is not, nobody is now, like in the case of Afghan women, nobody's thinking of controlling the tech companies, like how they should respond to the situation of Afghanistan, or at least taking them accountable in a way where everyone is so focused on with the Taliban and with what's happening inside Afghanistan and what we can change inside Afghanistan, but everyone is ignoring what can be done outside of that territory, outside of the geography. There is a lot of that we can do, and nobody was. I don't know. This might be the first panel that I have seen in the past 18 months that are talking about this issue. I have not seen any discussion on that, even from women, whether they're Afghan women or women who are not Afghan and leading these campaigns. So, but I think we really do need the this pace in the Afghan social media has become, I would call it Afghan social media, it's just like people, Afghans who are in social media become a very toxic, especially Twitter. It is a lot of comments and posts of hatred against ethnicities, against women, against even children, and I don't know, there's a lot of division, and at the same time people who are trying to come up with some sympathy or kindness or something just to figure this out. They are even targeted, and even if you report that, they are not taken seriously. And one of I think the problem is with the language, as Mahsa mentioned. It's Pashto language and it's Persian language, Dari language, which are quite similar, and everything, like for example, now if you write in Facebook the name of the Taliban in Pashto or in Dari, you cannot, your post can be directly reported and it can be directly taken out, even if you're writing against them. So you have to write their names with a different style, with a different spelling. You cannot do that. I think this is very crazy. Like you can be easily, like, there is no distinction, as I have said, and nobody is talking about that we need to put a distinction, and they need to support us. I've said in the beginning, they need to understand who is fighting for justice and who is fighting against justice, who is fighting for human rights and who is suppressing the humans. And it's not only about taking the rights, it's physically threatening the safety of people. It's physically about death threats. It's physically putting people in danger. So in a way, it is enabling them, and nobody's speaking. What happened in Burma, hate speech in Facebook was said that it was one of the primary examples for that. And I'm scared that following what is happening in Afghan social media probably might lead to another, I don't know, something horrible that we all would regret, not only for women and children, but for everyone who is living in that country. So I think there is no discussion of that, and it has to be taken seriously. And when you talk about it, most people say like, this is Facebook, this is Twitter, and it will just go away. But it's not going away. It is going to impact people. It is going to impact minds. People are reading that. People are coming. People are listening there. It is now kind of become a real place. When we wake up every morning, the first thing we do is we check our phones before washing our face, before having the breakfast. This is the first thing we do. So it's like a very serious part of our lives, and we have to talk about it. And what is happening there is not just going away. It is going to stick with people, and if it is going to be harmful, we have to talk about it.
Absolutely. Because I think when you're talking about the disinformation is becoming fact, and the trust and safety measures of these platforms have to change. And I think it changes by, again, we having more women in tech who understand the vulnerabilities that we face in so many different spaces, and to expand those trust and safety measures to not just include a small subset, but it approaches things from a global issue. I think if you walk and understand the challenges that women face in so many different channels and so many, both on and offline, it would help to expand those trust and safety measures to protect, so that the Meta and others on those platforms know that the information is not necessarily fact, it is disinformation, and be able to handle that in a more efficient and effective way.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
One thing that, for example, now in Afghanistan, there is no free media, and the same thing can be said about Iran. When there is no free media, it's very difficult to distinguish between disinformation and the facts. And so, and social media has become a place where you find less facts and more of the fake news, and more of the agendas that are run for specific reasons, and that are appearing more on the feeds rather than the facts that they should be there. And this can be another problematic place when there is no free media in the country. So everyone is coming to Twitter, everyone is coming to Facebook, because they don't get any information from any other source, and that is the place that is feeding the information. And just imagine if this information is wrong or fake or dangerous.
Yes, they can have really, really troubling consequences. Zenia, would you like to jump in on this question?
Probably, yeah. I was thinking about, we are facing the same kind of issue with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, when you can take a photo of destroyed house next to you on the street, and it's gonna be blocked because of the reports, because of the Russian bots and any other bots. And basically, I think that pretty good strategy that our government currently uses because of the fact that those images of just it's understandable that you can report about any kind of image that contains some disruption, death, and so on. But the good strategy they decided to go is building of personal brand of Ukraine, not only in concept of war, but the fun fact at the beginning of the war, we have to prove that we are another country. We are not Russia, and we are not friends, and we don't want to be friends with them. So we have to prove that we are other country, and we have to tell the world about our culture, about our artists, music, anything like this. And all these were done just to become familiar for them with us, yeah, that we are still humans, that we still have the same problems as any other person, and to get those kind of empathy, sympathy, like one human being to another one, because basically founders of global tech companies, they are professional businessmen, and they are interested in business and in money. They do not put tech philanthropy on themselves, right? So we have to make sure that all the society is kind of sympathized. So it's not okay to not have empathy in his or her position, right? It's okay in the society to support people who are fighting for their freedom, for their dignity in any kind of country. And it's normal to support people in need when government fights with them, when another country fights with them. And it's like all the strategy of standardization, probably of normalizing empathy to any other person, it's something that definitely should be done, should be continued. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Before we jump in and take some questions for the audience, I want to thank you all for representing women-driven digital spaces in crisis. I mean, this is the work that's going to, at one point, and to your point, Zenia, I hope it doesn't take 132 years, because I would like to see it too, but we will become the equalizers. We will have equity in these spaces, and also we will have safety and trust in these spaces, so that women can have the freedoms of being their right. We do have one question I see in the chat, and I think it's related to our last question about tech leaders. It says, what do you think individuals can do to support and further this cause? And I'll open it up to anyone who wants to answer.
I think it is up to individuals. Like, there are individuals who are extremely powerful people, and they can have a very serious impact on this issue. There are people out there as an individual that they can talk about this. They can bring those who are behind that, and who can bring the changes in the systems accountable, and can remind them what is happening, how it is hurting people. Maybe they are not intentionally doing that, but maybe sometimes they might not be aware of it, or sometimes if they are aware of it, they might not be taking it seriously. As you've mentioned, we need more of people, of like women and from other minorities, to be there and remind them how it is impacting their lives. And so there are these kind of individuals who are powerful, whose voices are heard, who are taken seriously. And then there are people like those who are in the middle. And I think just if we talk about it, this is the first thing. As I've mentioned, like, I've never seen any other discussion on this. It's a very important issue. after the Taliban collapsed, their republic collapsed, I'm posting not that much. Before that, I was at least posting every day something on my Facebook, something on my Twitter, because now I'm not only for my physical safety, but it is very toxic. You cannot talk about things. People are very frustrated, and your words can be taken out of context, and you can be attacked at the same and right at the moment, and it's very difficult. Like, we are suffering personally, and then everything there, instead that you want to fight it back, you will be, instead of fighting the Taliban, you will be fighting these people who are coming there and defending them. Things like that, it's very difficult. So it is the only place that we can have our voice. So individuals who are in the middle, just by keeping the discussion alive, I think, just by talking about that, just by reminding people that this is not right, this is not okay, this will be helping.
Absolutely, because when it comes down to it, women's rights is human rights, and we need more spaces where voices can definitely be heard freely without persecution. So anyone who has a question, feel free to come off mute, or you can drop your question in the chat. I see Laura, your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the very important conversation, and I salute all the women who are in such a crisis. I just have one question. Sorry, the lighting is not very good. I'm sitting outside. I just wanted to ask, in terms of digital literacy, what are the women in need of in terms of skills? I mean, Vital Voices has a vast network of professionals and experts in digital literacy and digital media. What do you feel are the skills that your women would need to protect themselves from Twitter and other platforms? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that one?
Yeah, I can attempt to answer that in terms of digital literacy. I mean, it's hard to answer this question without sounding infantilizing, I guess, of a population. So, I mean, in the communities I work with, the women are incredibly strong and brave. So I wouldn't want to say we need to create digital literacy, but I mean, there are definitely ways and strategies to navigate online spaces that one often has to learn through trial and tribulation. I mean, the thing that I see, especially when speaking to different women from different contexts, is the fact that there's so much to be learned through these kinds of transnational networks. So every time I talk about what's happening in Iran, I think it's really important, especially women who are in the thick of it. I always say this and always encourage this, is there need to be more transnational solidarity networks between Iranian women, Afghan women, Syrian women, because there's so much to be learned from each other in terms of what has been done, what has been learned, especially when it comes to digital literacy. I mean, I talk about this often. And I know a lot of people do that. Syrian women, Syrian activists have been through so much, and I think there's so much that further conversations and collaborations in the region between these kinds of communities can really help and benefit. But it's a hard question to answer in terms of what can we give to these women in terms of digital literacy, because I'm not a fan of it's being like, what can we teach you from that top down? It sounds top down. I'm not sure. And perhaps the other women have better answers than me.
Well, Martha, I do think you said something very valuable about collaboration. So if it's not necessarily a course that's teaching a particular digital literacy, it could also be partnership with women who are already in that space to help women who are already strong, brave, who are activists on the ground, to give them the tools to help them to be safe and to amplify their voices. Shafika, Zinnia?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I-
go ahead.
No, that's why I was saying
Yeah, I also agree. And the important thing about all this cooperation and communication is also not just about the skills and about the specific knowledges. It's also about empowering yourself, like inspiration, because even when I take any kind of professional course, I am inspired because of the fact that I know so nothing about some specific area, and I feel inspired of learning something. So the same thing happens when you meet some person that has huge experience of facing some kind of issues and fighting with them. This is something that empowers you and provides you with necessary skill set, even a basic one.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Just feel free to take yourself off mute.
I just want to mention one thing. When the Taliban took over, we were receiving some emails from, I don't remember the name of that NGO, but I think it was US-based NGO, and they were sending us emails how to keep ourselves safe. And one of the things was like, just in case if internet goes off, and what should you do? How can you get back and things like that. It was one of that thing they sent just a guideline in the email. And also we had a session with someone, an Afghan girl. She's working in with Facebook. The problem is that the 2 or 3 things that we face, like people who are telling us how to keep ourselves safe. The first thing was like, I felt like it telling us not to engage. It was very quite frustrating, like why? And Facebook even, they announced this option for Afghans that they can lock their profiles. Well, at that time, it was important because you can lock whatever it is inside your profile, but then again, you don't know who is a Talib that might probably in your friends list, and you don't know that, and it's not deleting everything. So if they stop you somewhere, they can again access to your Facebook and they can get into that. Even with the 2 or 3 things that happened during that time, mostly they were focusing on how to not be too much exposed and just keep low profile, which I think is not, I think it was not a way to keep us safe, because if that means safety, then I can just delete everything. I can delete my profile, I can stop working, I can stop doing that. And I don't know, and I never thought of that there can be ways that we can keep ourselves safe. Well, thank you for that. I will look into that. So probably this happened, but in another way, that be a low profile and things like that.
Thank you, Shafika. Noha, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you so much, Dara. Thank you so much for, moderating this so interesting discussion. And Masa, thanks for mentioning Syria, because there's a lot to learn from there, given how involved the both Russian and Iranian regimes are involved. But my question is, every crisis is different, but there's, so many people who have fled their countries because of, the conflict. There is a huge diaspora community in the West, US, Canada, Europe. What could be the collective role that the diaspora community could play in supporting their communities inside those countries, whether Afghanistan, Iran, Ukraine? I know digital security is one aspect of things, but there's also the role of civil society organizations that is being formed in the diaspora. Can you just, from your own or like experience, what do you think these organizations should do in support of their families back home?
Did you mean just civil society organizations should
No,
do?
the diaspora in general, the opposition to those regimes. I mean, different from Ukraine context, but the diaspora always has a huge role to play. When they're far from the conflict, they're able to organize themselves, they're able to think strategically. But a lesson learned, if you think there's a one unified lesson learned, what that would be.
Yeah, I mean, the diaspora in the Iranian context has been very powerful, which I guess it's just 40 years of brain drain and migration. So the Iranian diaspora community has been quite powerful, and they have been, I mean, especially in tech, there's been a massive push from the diaspora community. So many different efforts, from trying to get virtual private networks into the country. I know there's been groups trying to smuggle in Starlink devices inside of Iran. But one really interesting thing that I did see was in terms of the work that we've been doing with tech companies to try to really address and really try to help the situation in the Iranian context, is it's been really hard to get buy-in from massive companies like Google, but there has been really powerful mobilization by Iranians inside of Google, Googlers who are either connected to Iran or who really want to help the situation. And so that's been a really powerful kind of help and support we've been seeing in the diaspora. And I know there's one of the industries where there's been massive brain drain from Iran has been to Silicon Valley and the tech sector. So we have this really incredible community of Iranians in the diaspora who work in tech or who have really become entrepreneurs and have a lot of wealth from the tech sector that have been quietly, I guess, helping to empower, fighting digitally against the oppression inside of Iran. So that's been really nice to see. Obviously, it would be nice to maintain this kind of mobilization and incentive beyond the times where everyone is so super focused on it. Obviously, if things quiet down, or even before this kind of movement has started, we had seen this kind of effort and time, and I think we could have had a much more powerful community. And I hope this these efforts continue, because there's a massive role, and I'm sure maybe in the other contexts it can be similar.
Do we have any other questions from our audience? Okay, ladies, one last question. As we come to a close, do you have what are some of your closing remarks that you would like to leave with our audience, or any calls to activism before we end our call today?
I'd like to add probably, I'd like to ask all the audience and all the people who are in countries without any kind of crisis, to keep their, let's call it like, hearts open, to try to emphasize, to be interested in the situation that happens with a lot of women in different countries. And yeah, the important thing that is like with good feedbacks, when you get some kind of good service, you don't actually leave the feedback. When you have something negative to say, you definitely will do this. But the thing with support is kind of the same. You see a lot of negative. When you open the Twitter from the early morning, the first thing you see is some kind of hate speech on some kind of important issue for you personally. And it's very nice to have even just, not some kind of enthusiastic support, but just the basic native support from people around the world. It's kind of important, and especially when there's something bad happens right next to you. Yeah.
So what I would like to say is that two things are, I think, in Afghanistan's context important. Well, first is online education, since I don't think there will be in near future any positive news about the opening of schools. We don't want these girls to be left out of not receiving education. If any of you have an experience or know something, has a contact, whatever you can help, please reach out and help us, even if it's a very small advice, whatever you can. This will be greatly appreciated. And the second is, as I've mentioned in the beginning, the only place that Afghan women have their voice is right now social media and digital platforms. So please help them to reach out to as many people as possible. And we see the Taliban are reaching out to more people than us. They have more audience than us. Their videos are watched for millions, and even they have millions of Twitter followers. Once one of their accounts was verified by the Twitter, and then they took it back. So things like that happening, and sometimes we feel alone. You might have contacts in some of these companies, or probably you have with some media platforms, and you are on digital platforms. So please, 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 even if it's just a retweet, if just a small hashtag or whatever it is, don't forget to do that. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Masha, any closing words or call to activism?
Yeah. So it's been really powerful to hear what the perspectives from Ukraine and Afghanistan, and I'm sure there's many other women who have a lot of great knowledge and experiences from other contexts. So I hope there will be more spaces where we can exchange and learn from each other. And I guess that's the message of, this kind of solidarity and transnational work and helping to uplift each other. Of course, I follow the situation in Afghanistan. I see so many parallels. We have so many commonalities. And I, hope that the same can be given to Iranian women. And, I'm looking forward to learning more about, what's happening within the Ukraine context, and to help uplift each other. And especially in the digital spaces, a little can go a long way in supporting each other's movements.
Thank you, because we can definitely do so much more together than we can ever do apart. So thank you so much for your time today. This was really informative, and we need to have more of these collaborative conversations. So thank you again. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
I will stop recording.